Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got another of our In the News segments. We're going to talk about 5 companies today that had news out that I'm looking at and quite excited about and want to talk about. So I'm going to get right to it with a share screen here. And the first company we're going to talk about is i-80 Gold. i-80 Gold is a sponsor of the show, has been for quite some time. And really, the way I look at i-80 Gold is I think they're an excellent candidate for investors that want to have a cornerstone asset in their portfolio that they can hold for a long period of time and see exceptional growth. And the reason that I say that is that they have what I think is basically 3 world-class deposits and maybe a fourth. One of those is this Cove project that they announced. Another is their Granite Creek project. Another is their Ruby Deeps project. And then their Bonanza grade Hilltop discovery. So, you know, that's quite a portfolio of assets that can be future producers, and several of them are well on their way to becoming producers. i-80 Gold, as I said, announced best results to date from underground drilling at Cove. Results include 18.9 grams per ton of gold over 23.9 meters and 14.9 grams of gold over 32 meters. And 15.7 grams of gold over 22.5 meters. Now, bear in mind that this is a high-grade deposit that's over 1 million ounces of gold at over 10 grams per ton. So it's a very high-grade system, and these results are quite significantly above the resource numbers. And so that's pretty exciting stuff that they're, you know, especially when you're hitting a half an ounce at, you know, 30 meters or so. That's some pretty phenomenal stuff. And as they say here, this is a 100% owned McCoy Cove property, located in Lander County, Nevada. The new results include the best intercepts to date and continue to demonstrate continuity of high-grade mineralization in the CSD gap zone. You know, I'm a big fan of high-grade gold, but one of the other things that really stands out to me when looking at a high-grade gold project is continuity. If you have sporadic distribution of the high-grade gold, that's going to make for a very challenging mining operation. You sort of, you know, produce some gold here, and then you go 10 meters over to produce some more high-grade gold. That makes for a not continuity, and that's why continuity is so important. And that's the thing about Cove that is quite exciting. So as you can see there's the high-grade hits that they talked about in hole 10. In hole 11, also some great stuff, 15.7 grams over 22 meters, 21 grams over 11 meters, 18 over 30 meters, 27.8 over 14.9 meters. Here's a quote from Tyler Hill, who's the chief geologist of i-80. He stated, and I quote, "Grades and widths continue to meet or exceed expectations and are consistently at or above the current resource grade. With the phase 1 underground decline nearing completion, the focus will shift entirely to the drill program, permitting, and final mine approvals." So as you can see here, these are the holes that have been completed, planned holes, and this is all coming off an underground working here, where they're going to be drilling significantly to prove up that continuity. And as they're doing that, they're getting some of the best grades that they are getting the best grades that they've ever seen. And look at some of this stuff that remains open over here: 40 grams over 3 meters, 7 grams over 50.9 meters. including 16 grams over 13 meters. This is a very high-grade system. And by doing this extensive drilling, they can really not only prove up more ounces in the resource, but they can show that, this is a mineable operation. And that's exactly what it looks like. Here you can see the high-grade distribution, well distributed throughout this system. And as they say, Cove is one of the 3 projects currently being advanced to realize the company's big goal of becoming the 2nd largest gold producer in Nevada. Now, to put that into context, the 1st largest producer is the joint venture with Newmont and Barrick. So, to be second to those monsters is quite an exciting prospect. In addition to the underground drill program, the exploration and development program will also include the completion of the 1st phase of the underground decline and drift, and detailed hydrological and metallurgical test work in advance of completing a feasibility study following the underground definition drill program. These guys leave nothing to be to cause them problems. Sometimes companies can be in a hurry to get into production. And I've talked to Ewan about this before, the CEO of the company, Ewan Downey, and he thinks that a lot of that is caused because companies don't drill off the deposits significantly enough to remove the possibility of negative surprises. And so that's why they are so thorough with their drilling. And, this is a known deposit that they're, still shows well, as they say, because here you are well after it's been discovered and a resource has been drilled off, and they're getting the best results that they've ever had. Here you can see the highlight assay results from the underground drilling program, the location of those, Cove is a hell of a project. At one time, it was one of the key assets in Premier Gold, which was taken over, and then they spun out their Nevada assets into i-80 Gold to create i-80 Gold. And so Cove, I've been following the developments of the Cove deposit for many years. It's a spectacularly good project that will be a cornerstone asset for the company. Then you've also got Granite Creek, which is another project that keeps on, has great grades and excellent continuity, remains open along strike and at depth. Not far from it is a big 25 million ounce gold deposit that's hosted in the same kind of rocks and the structural corridor. As I said, excellent results on the assays. And that's another project that they're moving towards production. And then Ruby Deeps on the Ruby Hill project is another one that looks like it could go into production and be a tremendous underground bulk mining operation with thick intersections of very high grade for those kind of projects. And then in close proximity to Ruby Hill are the Ruby Deeps. They've got their bonanza grade CRD with very high grades of lead, silver, zinc, as well as an overprint of high grade gold. They're expanding on that. And then to the south, they recently acquired Paycore Minerals, and Paycore has the FAD deposit, and collectively that is also a bonanza grade CRD that remains open. And in between the bonanza CRD that i-80 Gold found and the bonanza CRD that Paycore had, there's a network of faulting that looks like it is the conduit that brought all that CRD mineralization up, as well as the gold mineralization up. So there's a big corridor that connects those two areas. So, collectively, they've got a runway there of, they've already got 14.3 million ounces of gold in resources, and they've done a lot of drilling to expand on that. So, they got a hell of an inventory of projects that are in that development stages, the late part of the development stages, which, brings to mind the Lassonde curve. And there's two big spikes or big waves of the Lassonde curve. One is an exploration success. Then there's a development discount window. Sometimes it can be 7 to 10 years. And then there's putting it into production, the second wave. Well, this company benefits from both waves in that they do a lot of exploration work, plus they're moving projects towards production. So in that development discount window, they're way into it and on the cusp of the second wave, the sweet spot of the start of the second wave. So collectively, they've got a really strong story. I think that ultimately it has the potential to be a multi-billion-dollar company, currently with an $800 million valuation. This company constantly puts out great news, and I think that trend will continue simply because just look at the news releases. And so there you go. That's the I-80 news from today. Galantas Gold is also a sponsor, and they had some really great results out. Why I started following Galantas Gold was for their Omagh orogenic gold project in Northern Ireland. I've been a big fan of Northern Ireland since the days that I picked a Dalradian when it was about a 25-cent stock early in their exploration. They ultimately were bought out and at multiples of that valuation. And so I know there's a lot of high-grade gold in Northern Ireland, and Galantas has a great project. But in the last 4 to 6 months, I want to say, they acquired this VMS project in Scotland called Galantas. And they just announced their first drilling into that system and hit 17.9 meters of 2.87% copper, 0.77 grams per ton of gold, 0.46% zinc, and 0.03% cobalt. Now, this gets me really excited because, a lot of copper projects these days are being mined at well under 1% of copper. Here you've got a thick intersection, 18 meters at 2.87% copper with precious metals and other base metals. Now, VMS deposits are volcanogenic massive sulfides, and so the mineralization comes up in volcanic events. And there's a couple different styles of VMS that you can see. Some are zinc and lead rich, and then you get some that are copper and gold rich. And that's what they have, and that's very exciting because I'm very bullish on both copper and gold. We need a lot more copper for the energy, the revolution towards moving into electric cars, as well as alternative energy sources are all going to need a lot of copper, and we just don't have enough copper exploration or mining happening, and not a lot with success like this. So Galantas hit a nice intersection of copper there with those other metals. Their drilling highlights are cobalt and vanadium, which are part of the United Kingdom's list of critical minerals, have been discovered in addition to the other minerals that are important raw materials enabling the transition to clean energy, including copper, silver, titanium, and zinc. Hole 23-GL-01, as they state in the headline, hit those that 2.87% copper. 4 holes have been completed over the main deposit area, totaling 190 meters, with another 2 holes planned by August. So, and look at that, it's right at surface, 4.78 meters below surface, to 22.68 meters. They're hitting a grade there that would be an attractive open pit gold grade. And then you've got the copper kicker, if you will, of 2.87% copper. While the titanium and vanadium grades are low in the first hole, it indicates their presence within the system and potential to discover high grades. They talk about the part of a 6-hole program aiming to test the Kerry Road deposit. This was identified by the Geological Survey, and but not a lot of work has been going on in it for decades. And you know, as we're seeing some of these events take place, China's putting restrictions on some of the critical minerals that are needed for computers, chips. And, you know, these things, as well as the economics of moving stuff all over the world, are kind of showing countries that the outsourcing of, you know, manufacturing a lot of things to China and India, you know, you shouldn't really be outsourcing your raw materials and your mining. And so a lot of countries that didn't see a lot of exploration are starting to see a lot more, and Scotland is definitely in that category. The mineralized horizon intercepted in the first hole was observed within a quartz carbonate rich sandwich between hornblende schist. The sulfide within this horizon was predominantly massive and semi-massive pyrrhotite and chalcopyrite. 2 further holes are planned, which will test the mineralization at a deeper level, and a deep hole to test below the current deposit. Mario Stefano, who's the CEO of the company, commented, and I quote, "This is a fantastic result for our first drill hole in Scotland, demonstrating significant polymetallic grades. The discovery of new critical minerals is a major development for the project, and we look forward to reporting further results as they become available." This is a nice hand specimen of the geocore. You can see the sulfide mineralization in here. And, you know, this really looks to me like you're just tapping into the top of a VMS system. So as you go deeper, you get more significant amounts of this massive sulfides. And as they say, this was a hell of a start for their project. You know, they're showing you some of the prospective rock, cutting where new massive sulfide has been observed in the bedrock. So yeah, this project is pretty wide open for exploration, and I love to see those massive sulfides and semi-massive sulfides, and that's an indication that as you go deeper, you're going to get more into the massive sulfides throughout the system. So really good looking stuff there for the company. And they're also drilling at their Oma orogenic gold system. In fact, I'm going to be doing an interview with Mario Stefano in the next day or two. So stay tuned for that. And I'm sure we'll get a great update from Mario regarding this Gerlach project and their Oma project. Okay, now I'm going to move over to Sokoman Minerals. Silkeman provides exploration update at their Moosehead Gold project in central Newfoundland. What really excites me about the Moosehead Gold project is that it's an orogenic gold system. And these can be very important systems. One of those is in the Fosterville mine in Australia. When they mined that deposit near surface for about 20 years, then they got down to the down deeper, and they found this Swan Zone, and the Swan Zone was phenomenally high grade, very low cost production, and it resulted in Kirkland Lake being one of the lowest cost producers of gold in the business. They were one of the best performing gold mining stocks, and ultimately led to them getting bought out for, I think it was about $14 billion. So these orogenic gold systems can be company makers. Another company making project that followed a similar path to success as Fosterville was the Red Lake mine that Gold Corp had. Now that project had also been in production for decades in the top part of the system, the orogenic gold system. Then Gold Corp found the bonanza grade portion of that system, and they had to get down to about 1,000 meters, and then it continued for another 1,000 meters of those bonanza grades, which also made Gold Corp one of the lowest cost producers at the time that they were producing from that deposit. Ultimately, they were also one of the lowest cost producers of gold, and a real cash machine of a mine. So that's, the context of what these orogenic gold systems can be. But I would point out that in both of those examples, the companies had the benefit of many years of production and understanding the system close to surface to lead them deeper. In the case of Sokoman, they are really trying to learn what those companies, Gold Corp and Kirkland Lake, learned from the near surface production. They're trying to learn that with drilling. And, so that is a different beast, if you will. But they're doing a very good job of it. And I'm just gonna try. Here they talk about drilling resumes with rigs at their South Pond and their 4063 zone target areas. Now, I got really pumped up about this 463 zone because they started catching bonanza grades pretty close to surface, let's say within 300 meters of vertical depth, 250 or something like that. They started tagging these bonanza grades. And that's pretty shallow for an orogenic gold system. I think they're on to something really important at 463, but they got to drill it more. These things are, you're looking for really small ore bodies, but extremely high grade. And so it takes some drilling to understand that. Here is the quote from Tim Froud, who's the president and CEO of Silkeman, and he says, and I quote, "Several programs were active during a recent pause in drilling, including re-examining a large number of earlier holes to garner more structural and mineralization details, revisiting the structural model with Dr. Kohler, which is ongoing, and reconnaissance level soil sampling over relatively unexplored areas of property. We have also commenced a review of historical geophysical surveys to pull additional target information from, as well as consideration of possibly completing additional geophysics at Moosehead. We are truly excited by the ongoing work of Dr. Kohler, who has defined the footwall environment as a prime target area for high-grade veins similar to the 463. MH22 463. This also explains several other historical isolated hits in the footwall that could never really be properly explained or fit in with the model at the time." Then they go into more details about the various different hits that they've had. There's a lot of high-grade gold in this system, but again, it's trying to figure that out. And they are trying to figure this out in an orogenic gold system without the benefit of 20 years of production or more, like you had at Fosterville and at the Red Lake mine. But here they show that that area where they had the 463. I think the highest grade was over 100 grams per ton or something like that. But they've got gold all over the place in this system. This is an interesting structural intersection here. Here's the Valentine Lake shear zone. So that's a deep crustal feature. These secondary faults that come off of the main structural system are equally as important. But I would point out that they've got a lot of high grade gold distributed here. It's figuring it out that they're working on. There's also a quote here. A revised structural interpretation has been received from Dr. Kohler, who states, and I quote, "The splitting out of veins and shear faults makes the primary and deformed vein pattern visually much clearer, and there is an emerging significance of the vein trends in the footwall to the eastern trend, which are highly oblique to main shears. These are the 463 type veins in a similar trending vein near surface. It was suggested that these veins may be linkages between two shear structures which may be duplicated. Several large areas with no drill testing relatively at shallow depths were identified. On a larger scale, the mineralization at Moosehead appears with a northeast trending regional tectonic contact that lays to the south of the currently outlined vein system. The geological interpretation of this contact is the Valentine Lake structure, a southeast dipping thrust reverse fault, which could be the structural hanging wall to the south, and a southeast dipping gold vein system. The tectonic structure is somewhat obscure in the magnetics, is not well defined on surface, and the limit of mineralization and actual structural corridor requires further work to be defined. It is believed that this type of structure present at Moosehead is similar to that seen at Newfound Gold's Queensway property, where the veins dip opposite to the main fault. The Newfound Gold model could be a useful structural template for the regional Moosehead system and a guide to the regional drill spacing, end quote. So to break that down, he's talking about a complex structural story. And this is really important because those deep faults that are the conduit that the gold-bearing fluids make their way up. But then you get a lot of secondary faulting that can make, you want to see a complex faulting system in these orogenic gold systems. That's exactly what Newfound Gold has found, and really get a handle on how the zones of gold mineralization are moving in relationship to the big fault and the secondary faulting. And that's really what he's trying to explain here. And, that's why in these kind of systems, a structural geologist is really important. And they got a good one in Dr. Kohler there. And, he's on top of this structural story. And I think his work is going to lead to a lot more success at the Moosehead project. I love these orogenic gold system. Yes, they can be complex. Yes, they can be challenging to drill. But if you find a special one, which I think they have at Moosehead, it can be a company maker. So that's their news, and check it out on their website. Alta Copper appoints Andrew Hamilton to the board of directors. Alta Copper announces the appointment of Mr. Andrew Hamilton as a director of the company. Here's a quote from Giulio Bonifacio, who stated, and I quote, "We are pleased to announce the appointment of Andrew Hamilton to the board of directors of Alta Copper. Andrew's wealth of experience in construction, completion, and commissioning of major projects will prove invaluable as we move to the next stage of development for our 100% owned Canariaco Advanced Stage Copper Project." They talk about Andrew's experience in building mines, mechanical engineer from University of South Australia, really sharp guy. Now, Mr. Hamilton joined Fortescue Metals in early 2008 to complete, commission, and ramp up Fortescue's first operational Cloudbreak mine, and later delivery of the site's wet beneficiation and power station upgrades. Prior to this, Mr. Hamilton had held project management and delivery roles at Project Magnet South Australia and managed the design of the African Minerals three-stage hematite and magnetite development, delivering the first stage in West Africa. And then they talk about other experiences. Now, why this is an important news release to me is that Fortescue is a major mining company, and they're also a major shareholder of Alta Copper. And I have believed for a long time that the Canariaco project will be a future mine. The reason that I say that is because they've got they're one of the top 10 in grade and size for these kind of projects that are undeveloped, which makes them something that a major mining company needs to develop, because they don't have enough new mine copper projects in the pipeline to become future mines. Now, Fortescue owns a big chunk of the stock in Alta, and they get to assign a board member. Now, this is an important development because Andrew Hamilton is experienced in building mines. So, you know, it's not a surprise to me that they put a mine builder onto the board of Alta Copper. And I think it's an indication that they think that, like I do, that there's a mine of the future here, and they want the right kind of people on the board helping move the Canariaco project of Alta Copper towards that ultimate goal. So I'm really excited to hear this development, and it shows that Fortescue, who is a major mining company, believes that Canariaco can be a future mine. So there's another one. All four of those companies are sponsors of my show, and later I'll do a cautionary statement or disclaimer on my sponsors. But I've got one more company I'm going to talk about before I close off, and that is 9 Mile Metals. They announced the drill rig mobilization for the continuation of phase 2 drill program at 9 Mile Brook. They said that they're pleased to announce mobilization of drilling track mount rig for continuation of the stage 2 drill program at their 9 Mile Brook VMS project in the world famous Bathurst mining camp of New Brunswick. Following reprocessing and technical analysis from phase 1, refined targeting has identified a new structure cross-cutting the project area west of the lens, defined by a chargeability high. The 9 Mile structural corridor contains individual targets along its boundaries that have never been drill tested. The completion of the 5,000 meter stage 2 drill program is scheduled to resume by July 17th. Enhanced targeting definition has identified a massive new structure, the 9 Mile structural corridor, and new targets on the western flank of the lens. The boundaries of the structure correlates to the island's trend in the west and along a well-defined geophysical contact in the east. The structures have never been tested by drilling. The new structural trend identified by the chargeability west of the lens may, due to extensive folding, contain felsic volcanics of the Spruce Lake Formation, host to known VMS mineralization in the Bathurst mining camp. Targeting is focused along both the western and eastern contacts of the 9 Mile structural corridor, where favorable geology coincides with individual discrete anomalies, as in the north, where veins of copper and zinc mineralization were intersected in T01BRM at the islands. Reinterpretation of the geophysical and geological data further define the regional trend and boundaries that host the lens mineralization. New targets have been identified with a node at hinge A, and it's plunged to the north. Lantex track-mounted drill rig provides ease of access, reducing moving costs while also keeping environmental disturbance to a minimum. Landtech has also secured a reflex easy track, a high precision magnetic and gravimetric instrument that can transfer vital downhole survey data in real time to assist in the planning and modeling of data. So here you can see the lens, and here you can see that that structural target that they're talking about. I really hope to see them drill really close proximity to the lens in order to understand the mineralization at that lens. And why I'm really impressed with this lens is, you know, something that comes to surface. So it's the top of a system, and they hit over 10 meters with 10% copper in it. This is an extremely rich lens, and also very big for a lens. And so what that suggests is that the VMS, the volcanogenic massive sulfide system that this came off of, is probably big and high grade itself. So trying to understand this lens and where it came from, I think is crucial to the success of this project. And they kind of went off on a tangent for a while. They're drilling geophysical anomalies, and they kind of got skunked on those series that they recently did. But I'm glad to see them get back to drilling, you know, where they think that they could find the source of the very high grade 9 Mile Brook lens. So that's their news from today. I'm not going to read off the quote, but there's a lot of good information from both Patrick Cruikshank, who's the CEO of the company, as well as their Gary Lohman, who's the PGO and VP Exploration and the director of the company. So I recommend you take a look at that. And here's another map that shows you the lens. Here is the structural corridor. I actually think that there's a fault that goes over in this direction and up in here. And I think that that could be associated to that. But they have geophysics that suggests that something is happening here. You've got interesting geophysics all over this area, but you know, you really have to be careful when you're exploring for a VMS system or any system for that matter. And geophysics can have a lot of false negative or false positives. You know, when you have an ore deposit, drilling tight spacing around that deposit to understand the direction of the mineralization is a good way to use the drill rig. And that's the news from 9 Mile Metals. All righty, so that's the show for today. As I mentioned earlier, for the companies that I talked about at the start were our sponsors, and sponsors pay me a fee, and that enables me to do a lot of homework on them and really follow their developments closely. It enables me to put out a lot of content about them as an advocate for the work that they're doing, and also the advocate sort of work that I do for the industry, the metals, and talking about companies that aren't sponsors of my work. So I'm really thankful to them for doing that. But I don't do that to you know, they're not sponsors so that I can move the valuation of the company. Really, that's I'm not. All my shows are completely for information purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, you have to speak with your financial advisors to assess if anything I'm talking about meets your risk profile. And you also got to do your homework. I mean to be part of that due diligence in the interviews that I do and discussing the news releases and my sector reports and stuff like that. But really going to their websites, checking out their news releases, checking out their corporate presentations, calling the companies should also be part of your homework or due diligence to understand these companies. And so do that homework. On that note, have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.